Hello, and welcome to my channel, The Entrepreneurial Mindset. My name is Jay Berman, and today's presentation is Essential Marketing Concepts, Episode 9. Today's concepts come from my book, Is Your Business Idea a Good Investment?, which is available on Amazon.com, Kindle version only. Go to the Amazon search bar, select books, type in my name, Jay Berman, scroll to my book to purchase, and by doing so, you support my channel. Thank you. So today, I'm going to discuss the business market. Now, episodes 1 through 8, I covered in pretty great detail the essential markets of the essential marketing concepts prevalent in regarding the consumer market, which is 70% of the U.S. economy. However, the business market, which is abbreviated to B2B, is 30% of the U.S. economy. So I'm going to talk about why the business market is unique, the market segmentation principles regarding deciding who should be your customer if you're selling strictly to businesses versus consumers, and how businesses promote their goods and services under business promotion. So what characterizes the B2B market is the idea that you're going to have fewer transactions because you're going to have fewer clients. So if you're selling to consumers, you can be selling to hundreds, thousands, even millions of consumers. When it comes to the business market, yes, you could be selling to thousands of businesses, but you're going to have fewer clients versus the consumer market. They can be more like in the hundreds, maybe thousands, but more like in the hundreds. There's a reason for that, because you're going to have a higher dollar amount per transaction when you have business clients. So, for example, you might sell a T-shirt for like $20 to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. But in the business market, your dollar volume is going to be much bigger because you're selling to fewer customers, fewer clients. And the danger of having fewer clients is that you're at greater financial risk. So let's say you have 10 clients and you lose 3, then you could be in financial peril. So the whole idea is that you have to rely on fewer customers for your profit, for your net income. One important characteristic of the B2B market is relationship management. So you may need a salesperson, because sales cultivation takes time when it comes to selling to businesses. I highly recommend you see my video, The 10 Major Sales Barriers. Usually when you sell to businesses, it's more complex because you're probably going to have to customize your good or service, and it's going to take time to implement the good and service when you sell to a business. The other thing also is very important to recognize is that when you're selling to a business, you're selling to a committee. Okay, so it's not just one person at the company you're selling to. First, you have to get past the gatekeepers. These are the people who screen all the phone calls. When salespeople try to reach a company, these gatekeepers are your secretaries, your administrative assistants, your executive assistants. They're the ones answering the emails. They're the ones who are monitoring the emails. They're the ones answering the phone calls. Then there are the initiators, ones who at the company feel like, there's a problem we need to solve. So let's start this buying process. Then there are people who aren't necessarily initiating the purchase, but they have an important influence. They may be the ones who control the money at the company, or they're the ones who could be using the product, or maybe it's their department. So there are a lot of people who play an important influence when it comes to purchasing a good or service for a company. Then, of course, there are the users. Then there are the deciders. The deciders would be the ones who approve the budget for a particular good or service. And of course, let's not ignore the role of purchasing agents, which I'll talk about in about a minute or two. When it comes to market segmentation techniques for B2B markets, number one is the location. How many businesses in a particular locale that might be interested in your good or service? What industry are you marketing to? Is there a particular type of business in a particular location? Revenue, what revenue does the company need to have for them to be able to, let's say, afford your good and service? You might say, I need companies that their annual revenue is at least, let's say, $1 million or $5 million or $10 million. Maybe it could be business size, the number of employees. According to the Small Business Administration, a small business is defined as 500 employees or less. A large business is considered more than 500 employees. So who are the type of business buyers that you could be marketing to? First could be the producers. The producers are the ones who purchase goods and services and then transform them into goods and services. For example, the jewelry business, they import metal and diamonds and they convert them into rings and jewelry. Then you have your resellers. These are the goods or services that are not transformed, but they're just basically resold. So your wholesalers and retailers are your typical resellers. Wholesalers sell to retailers and retailers sell to consumers. Now, wholesalers and retailers often have warehouses to hold inventory before they ship merchandise to stores. Then you have service providers, which of course provide services and they charge a fee, either monthly or annually. The government is a huge purchaser of goods and services. So your local government, your county, your city, your state, and of course the federal government spends billions and billions of dollars on goods and services. And then of course, let's not ignore the nonprofit sector, such as education, both K through 12, colleges and universities. All require goods and services, and there's healthcare, hospitals, physician practices, dental practices, eye care, those kind of places. Anything regarding healthcare, charities, and then of course theaters. So what is the role of purchasing agents? So if the company is big enough, they're going to have a purchasing department controlled by purchasing agents. So what is their particular job? They identify suppliers and obtain bids from them. So perhaps some of the company says, we need a new internet service provider, or we need a new chemical provider, or we need a new metal provider, or whatever good or service that the company needs, depending on the industry. So the purchasing agent will negotiate prices, they'll negotiate delivery dates, and they'll negotiate payment terms for the good and service. They pay the supplier and the vendor invoices, and then they track expenses and oversee budgets for goods and services. So what exactly is the buying process in a B2B situation? Well, first the company has to, or somebody at the company has to identify a need, want, or concern. It needs to be recognized. It needs to be described in pretty good detail, and it has to be justified in terms of payoff. So when companies buy goods and services, they kind of look at it as an investment. And they need to know if it's going to pay off, it's going to be good for the company. So there are two things that a if you're going to sell to a business, there's two things they want to hear. One is, how is this good or service going to make me money, or how is it going to save me money? In other words, the prime motivation when companies buy goods and services is this going to increase my profits? Is this going to help me make money? So then somebody at the company has to research potential suppliers. They have to contact them and perhaps meet with them in some sort of meeting. It gives the potential supplier and a meeting to make a presentation about why their goods services are better than what they already have. And then the company will then, or the purchasing agents will request and evaluate what we call a request for proposal. And then this is where the company submits a document explaining the benefits and the features of their particular good or service and why it's better and why they should perhaps switch to their good or service. And then there is a negotiation terms, and then eventually the company will pick a supplier. Now, of course, purchasing in a B2B situation can take weeks. It can also take months. For example, it's not unusual for an airline to spend at least 2 years just to buy an airplane. Then you have to sign the contract, and then it has to be, then you have to implement the contract terms. Then you may have to need to establish inventory control and replenishment with suppliers. Has to be some sort of mechanism. If the company needs additional goods, how is those goods going to be replenished? How often? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Or is it on an as-need basis? And then the company will then evaluate the product and the supplier, maybe make changes to the product and contract terms if necessary. And maybe if the supplier is not doing a good job, maybe replace that supplier if necessary. And then, of course, they have to do the whole search process in order to look for a better supplier. So what are some of the common objections when it comes to selling to businesses? Number one is the quality. Is your product's qualities better than the product of our current supplier? In other words, does your product have better features, better benefits? Does it work better? That's where we would consider replacing our current supplier. Service, delivery, maintenance. Is your customer service better than our current supplier? It could be. What's happening in the industry? For example, is your product better at updating due to industry changes? Because industries change all the time. Therefore, products, goods, and services have to change over time. And then, of course, there's the government. Is your product better at meeting or exceeding government standards, regulations, laws regarding that particular good or service or in that particular industry? Now, how do businesses promote? They don't necessarily rely too much on advertising. Advertising is more of a, more common in a consumer market, because in a B2B situation, you want to develop relationships with your clients that I mentioned earlier. It's very important to develop relationships with your potential clients. So you may offer free merchandise or samples during trade shows at industry conventions. The Chamber of Commerce might have events where you can meet other businesses that you're targeting regarding your good or service. Maybe advertise in maybe trade publications and relevant social media platforms related to that industry. And then, of course, you can always use email marketing campaigns if you're able to obtain the email addresses of the companies, businesses that you are targeting. And that's all I have for today. Any questions or comments, please use the comment section below. Please subscribe to my channel for more educational content about entrepreneurship. And I thank you for watching.